Tonight we're going to interview one of the best lawyers in the country. Here, let me show you a clip.
HSBC was caught washing billions of dollars for terrorist organizations and drug cartels. The Obama administration caught him. Eric Holder clearly caught him, made him sign a 16-page document. Yes, we washed money. Yes, we made billions of dollars. Yes, we knew what we were doing was going to result in the death of human beings, but we did it anyway.
It's amazing what the big banks get away with. Mike's now written a book about that's a novel about similar stories. I want to talk to him about it. He's also one of the original hosts of Ring of Fire, which is in our network, and in the Trial Lawyer Hall of Fame. Pat, what do you the awards you won from giant corporations are in the billions, correct?
They are. They certainly are.
Yeah.
I guess the last one was PFAS, and that was fluorocarbon that continues to kill people all over the country right now.
Yeah. What I say all the time is trial lawyers are the last line of defense against corporate rule. Everything else has been totally destroyed. They've taken over our government, they've killed our democracy, etc. But they just can't get rid of you guys. And so when they do something wrong, someone like Pap is on the watch and he comes for them. And they know it and they're afraid of him, which I enjoy. So, but Pap, this time you decided to write Suspicious Activity with Christopher Paulos. And it is actually a novel, so a legal thriller. So tell me why you chose to do it in this form, and then I do want to get back to how it relates to the real world, because this stuff does actually, at least part of it actually does happen.
Yeah, years ago I started writing these novels. Skyhorse with Simon and Schuster, they're a subsidiary of Simon and Schuster, started publishing them, and they continue. So they continue to ask me to write them, and I continue to turn them out. I think the reason is that they're true to life. I mean, every novel that I've written has been based on a project, a case that I've handled, everything ranging from the tobacco case to various pharmaceutical cases, to the opioid case, to PFAS. And so I'm able to take those stories, Jack, and I'm able to say, this really happened. And then, of course, you put a little fiction to it. You add a murder here and there, suspense here and there, and it makes it into a good novel. And I think the reason they sell so well is because people have an interest. They almost have a voyeur interest in what's the backstory behind what lawyers do. And these books certainly tell the backstory.
Yeah, and what the bankers do, and what big giant corporations do. And a lot of the John Grisham novels also worked because they were based on the reality of what corporate, malfeasance and over the top wrongdoing, like the funding terrorism, as you were alluding to in the news clip that we showed. Mm-hmm. But before I get into the real world, so what happens in this particular book, Suspicious Activity?
Well, it's the story of how a series of banks actually have taken money, and they have a system to where they're able to cover up the fact that drug cartels are coming to them and saying, can you wash this in a way that nobody's going to notice? And there's a system in place that in the industry, it's called suspicious activity reports. And what's done in this book is it tells about, and again, it draws on real life, but it tells how they go phoning up those records to where the government never finds out that they've moved $100 billion through the bank. And those $100 billion have gone to drug cartels, terror groups, a whole host of illegal activity that they're able to hide. And the problem is, Jack, it's true. It goes on, it still goes on. That clip that you showed tells the story of HSBC, $100 billion run through. They were fined $1.6 billion after they admitted, yes, we did it. And yes, we knew it resulted in the loss of human life. This book takes that story and it just puts it on the cases that we actually handle. We handle more than 2,000 cases for people that have lost family members. They've lost their arms and legs and eyesight through terrorist activity. It's been funded by money that's been washed through banks right here in the United States. And so it's an easy story to tell because it's true. And the difficulty in telling a story like that is that it's almost so hard to believe that the average person says, surely that doesn't go on in this country. It was like the last book I wrote about inhuman trafficking. The title was called Inhuman Trafficking. And it told the inside game. It said, how does this occur? How does Wall Street get involved? Where does the money coming from? Why do we ignore what's happening? And so when people read that type of thing, it's almost a suspension of disbelief. We don't want to believe that we have a system that's not able to deal with these types of extreme problems in the United States. And unfortunately, corporate media doesn't tell the story. They didn't tell the HSB story at all, hardly. I mean, this should have been a huge story. Should have lasted weeks. The reason they don't is the advertising dollars are so good. And so they take a pass on a story like the opioid case, where advertisers were pumping billions of dollars into the media. And so the story was never told, even though for years we had been talking about this story. We started this case, the opioid case, long before anybody did anything about it. We did the same thing in this case. But why won't the media report about it? Because it's about money. And why won't regulators do anything about it? Because they're moving from their job as a regulator to their job in the industry. It's a revolving door that they're paid big bucks to look the other way. Sometimes politics gets involved. Sometimes you have politics that the folks that should be making decisions are too Republican or too Democrat, and they're afraid it's going to hurt their party, so they don't take action. Rather, it's almost like they regard politics as a team sport rather than saying, I've got a job to do, and I'm sorry that this is Democrats doing this or Republicans doing this, but we have to do something about it. So a lot of times it is the last, as you point out, we are kind of the last line in the sand, because I don't care about the politics. I don't need advertising money. I just go after the folks that I think have done wrong. And these books, the first one was called Law and Disorder. Second, there's a whole series of these books. And they're doing a screenplay on this one right now. I think you'll be interested to see how that turns out.
No, I love it. So we'll put the link in the description box for where you can get Suspicious Activity. And speaking of movies, Pat was featured in one of our movies about OxyContin because they got justice on that issue as well. And Pat, it's so true because, politicians, regulators, media, all bought off in different ways through ads, donations, etc. But they can't buy off the trial lawyers, and so you guys drive them crazy. And so I am curious, like they go after the lawyers in the book, right? And they got the IEDs and all that fun stuff. Well, fun in a book, not in real life. But have they ever come after you in any way, shape, or form since you're one of their top nemesis?
Not physically. We're forever finding memos and emails. Papantonio's involved. Don't give him any breaks. Papantonio's involved. Do this, do A, B, and C. Try to get him kicked out of the case. That's what they tried to do on opioid, was get me kicked out of the case because I had said something in the media that was insulting to the Sackler family, who was responsible for killing 150 people a day. And they thought that's just reprehensible that I would say something in the media about that. And they tried to get me kicked off that case. I think they've tried that probably in at least half of the cases I've handled, where if they can just get me out of the way, they think it goes away. And most of the time I can hang in there and it doesn't go away. But there's plenty of good lawyers out there that pick up where I leave off.
Yeah, so back to the HSBC case in the real world. Your point about that is so good because as you were saying, I was thinking, my God, the whole country talked about M&Ms for like a couple of weeks. You remember that? Should the M&Ms wear this or should they wear that? Yes. Should they wear the boots or the sneakers? I mean, for a little while, with the gender of Mr. Potato Head had a run, right? I mean, we'll talk about the most absurd things. Oh my God, a trans person got a Bud Light can, one can of beer. And we're still talking about it, right? But tell us about the crimes that went through HSBC, because it was unbelievable. They're funding terrorists. And it was just the most spectacular crimes. Barely got any coverage.
Yeah. Not only did it not get coverage, Cenk, the real problem is nobody went to prison. Okay. You've heard me say so many times, we look at these folks that have MBAs from Harvard and Yale, and they're dressed up in Armani suits, and we don't regard them as criminals because they look too much like us. They look too much like leadership or whatever it may be. And so we treat them different. We have a separate system on how we treat them. And the problem is it perpetuates itself. Generation after generation of MBAs talk about the fact, Uncle Joe got away with something. Right now I'm dealing, as you may or may not know, with this big fight with Johnson & Johnson, where Johnson & Johnson is a $450 billion company and they're trying to go bankrupt. And you know what? They might get away with it. And if they do, they will have killed tens of thousands of women from a horrible disease. And they knowingly did that over a period of 50 years. Even with $450 billion in the bank, they're trying to say we can't pay that. So I'm in this huge fight right now with where I'm trying to say, look, let's bring some logic to this. And it's a brutal attack. It's brutal, personal attacks, just going after me and other people involved from a real personal standpoint. But that's just part of the territory, because if we don't do that, it just perpetuates itself generation after generation. I mean, think about it. It's a pretty good deal when you can make a product that kills tens of thousands of people. You make $1 gazillion on it. And then after you're done, you say, I don't really want to pay for all that suffering. I don't want to pay these victims. I'm going to just seek protection in bankruptcy court. And so that's a huge fight that's going on in the legal community right now. And I'm in the middle of that fight trying to say there's some things that you should never appear in a bankruptcy court to look for that kind of relief. So.
Yeah, people talk about how Alex Jones is trying to get out of paying his money through going through a bankruptcy, right? But Johnson & Johnson invented that to try to get away from you. But
I sometimes
in all
feel like
seriousness,
they might get away with it, which would be correct.
Yeah, those corporations, they don't want to pay their bills and they don't want to deal with the consequences of their actions. And like you said, none of them ever go to jail. They could do anything in the world. Like Rick Scott, biggest Medicare fraud in American history. And over $1 billion in fines. They admitted it. Felony counts for the company. But who cares about the company? That no one actually went to prison. The CEO walks out and then becomes governor and senator. So anyway, I wanted to ask you one last question about the book. You got any lawsuits you're working on today that's similar to what's in the book? Is there anything that
there's a new book that comes. New book comes out in January. It's about the insulin. It's called The Middleman. It's about the price fixing of the insulin case, where people are paying. I think it's last time we checked, it's 2,000 times. It's a 2,000% markup for insulin, where people that rely on insulin to live are having to cut the medicine in half so they can pay for food or pay for the home or pay for bills. And so it's a real tragedy. The companies that make the product have just done a horrendous bit of lying and cover up. And so I filed that case, and we're after them. It's not just the insulin industry; it's pharmaceutical industry in general. But we really have caught them. The documents, when they come out in the book, when they come out public, are horrendous. It's almost like I wrote them to create a lawsuit. That's how bad they are. So that's the next book that comes out, and that's the next big case that you're probably going to be hearing a lot about.
All right, guys. So listen, next time you hear somebody hyping up the story about the hot coffee and McDonald's and saying this or that about trial lawyers, remember Pap and how much corporate America is scared of him, because when they do something wrong, he comes a knocking. So that's also trial lawyers and the much more important part of trial lawyers. And like I said, last line of defense, because there's nothing left. So Mike Papantonio, the book is Suspicious Activity. Thank you, brother. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.